Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of the Holistic Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Maitri Balmurugan. I am the founder and CEO of Evenfall Cosmetics. Evenfall is not just another skincare brand, but is a holistic wellness brand carefully curated to provide you wellness in all the four aspects of your life: your physical, mental, social, and spiritual. Now, please allow me to set the scene for our splendid guest today. She is a psychologist, a breathwork facilitator, inner child healer, sobriety coach, and also an NLP practitioner. Please welcome Meena Iyer. Meena, I'm so happy. Thank you for taking out the time to honor us with your presence today. It really, really means a lot.
Thank you for having me, Maitri. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, I would like to flow into our first question, which is what, according to you, is the definition of the term holistic wellness?
Holistic meaning all round. So, if I put it really simply, it's the wellness of body, mind, and spirit. Now, body is easy to understand, right? It's the physical body. It involves things like maintaining normal health, keeping yourself free of sickness, having a degree of fitness, and all of this comes into wellness when it comes to the body. Exercising regularly, all of that. And mind is where psychology and some of the things you talked about right now that I work with is about our thinking and our emoting and our behavior patterns, all of that coming from the mind. Now, the third one, spirit, is a little difficult to define, right? So, when you say spirit, and from that comes the word spirituality, let's look at it as something that's neither body nor mind. That's something deep within, but the wellness of which is really important. And the best way that I can maybe define spirit is the essence of who we are. So, body, mind, and spirit go together to create holistic wellness.
Wow, that was a very beautiful answer. I loved your definition of spirit, especially. I think it was a very beautiful definition. The essence of who we are. I think it could not have been put better. Thank you. That was a very, very beautiful answer. Now, I want to ask you, you are trained in multiple healing modalities. Can you start by sharing what drew you into this field of emotional and mental wellness?
Very honestly, Maitri, my own experiences. So I worked in the corporate world for close to 18 years, going through whatever that involved. I worked in advertising sales with print and television media. And like anyone else, it involved a lot of stress and a lot of targets and the way a corporate job goes. And side by side, taking care of family and, going through what is now known as mom's guilt, right? Taking out time away from family to manage commitments. So, all of that. So, this was, say, around 2008, 7, 8. I had started thinking about looking for something that'll be a support. And slowly, the starting point was coaching, actually, a series of coaching programs. And then slowly, I transitioned to do this work full time professionally as well. But to answer your question, definitely the seeking started looking for solutions to what I was facing, right? Whether it was health challenges, whether it was emotional, dysregulation, coping with the demands of a corporate life and being a family person. It was all of that. And once I began, of course, the journey became more interesting. It drew me deeper and deeper. And then I knew that I couldn't sort of, live both lives. So I chose to come here and get into this like formally, get trained, get equipped, and make this my profession.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love how explained your own personal journey in detail. I get that juggling both a very demanding corporate job and being a mom at the same time, balancing that it's crazy. And I love how you used your own experience to not just heal yourself, but to heal many other men and women in the process. That's such a beautiful thing, I must say. It's very, very holistic in and of itself. Thank you for the answer. Now, I want to ask you that you are a psychologist. So, how would you explain what psychology really focuses on when it comes to understanding human behavior and emotion.
Right. So, like you said, human behavior and emotion, and the third part is thought. So, the way we think, the way we feel or emote, and then the way we behave. That's what it's all about, essentially. And so, if we're looking at psychotherapy, which then now, we're talking about therapy and people doing therapy sessions, it's about understanding their psychology. And why would somebody want to understand their psychology? Because they're wondering why certain things look the way they look in their life, right? Now, no one's going to go to a therapist if nothing seems to be wrong with their life, right? But what is wrong is that something's not working the way we want to. And so we pause and we ponder, like, what is it about the way I think? And the way I think, and therefore from there, the way when you think even more strongly, it becomes a feeling in the body and it becomes an emotion, right? And then I act on those feelings, emotions, and thoughts. So what is it about me? And then going back in history and delving into how my personality got shaped this way, how I became like this, and therefore how can I change? What can motivate me to change? So I'm just trying to describe to you the different aspects that involve the study of the human mind, psychology, and some of it is more like a very defined exact science. Like if you look at certain behavior disorders, then there are symptoms and there are tests that are carried out to assess a person's state of mind and how they respond to different questions and different situations. And some of it, which is what more someone, a therapist like me, would kind of face in a day, on a day-to-day basis, which is like, I'm uncomfortable at work, I can't assert myself, or in relationships I find that I give too much, or I find that I pull back or I disassociate, like day-to-day stuff. And where is this coming from? That's where psychology is involved. And there's another question I'm going to answer, because a lot of people ask me this difference between psychology and psychiatry. And that's really, psychiatry is looking at the brain as an organ and is looking at neurotransmitters. Psychiatry is not concerned with thoughts and feelings and behaviors, though they work with clinical psychologists to assess those things and then medicate a person wherever it's needed. And where it's needed is usually when the brain chemistry itself has got altered. So yeah, I get asked often, so which is why I volunteered.
Wow. Especially, there was a very beautiful answer about psychology. I love how you described real life situations that anybody listening to this could relate to. You didn't just throw clinical jargons here and there, which you could have. You made it very relatable for for a lay woman like me, or for anybody listening, to understand why is it important for us to, pay attention to where our thought goes, because where a thought goes is what we ultimately become, or that becomes a reality. So I also loved how you mentioned the difference between psychiatry and psychology, because that's something I think a lot of us really confuse with these
Yes,
days. So
yes.
you mentioned psychiatry is has to do more of with the brain. It does not do with the thought aspect of it, but psychology works more of with the thought aspect of it, is what I'm
With
gathering.
the mind, which really you can say is not definable like the brain. It's not an organ
Yeah,
that sits in the cranium.
yeah,
And the mind is how will you assess the mind? By the way you
yeah.
think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. So psychology has to do with that, and not brain chemicals and neurotransmitters and
Yeah.
changing that or assessing that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's very beautiful. Can I say that psychology is more holistic as compared to psychiatry, which focuses a little more on, the clinical side of things? Is that safe for me to say?
I think, of course, psychology is holistic and is looking at the mind. However, psychiatry is important.
Mm-hmm.
Though, in a simple way, we can understand that a psychological disorder really gone quite severe will present as a symptom that needs the treatment of the brain with
Mm-hmm.
medication.
Okay.
So psychiatrists are needed because we have, I mean, we have people who suffer from very severe disorders
Yeah.
that impair, like even something like a very severe clinical depression would need medication, and
Yeah.
that's something a psychiatrist can provide. Going all the way up to maybe the very severe psychotic disorders that make a person completely unfit to even function in society. And so both are important. However, the majority of people who are saying they're seeking treatment or they're seeking therapy, psychology works just fine.
Wow. Would you say that even for such severe cases, do the doctors really take the consultation of psychologists as well? So they work with psychologists and psychiatrists, or is it just psychiatrists who are treating these the severe conditions?
So it goes hand in hand. Yeah. And,
Okay.
but psychology works on its own for someone who doesn't need to be medicated. Then taking regular therapy sessions and working with, working with their lifestyle and things like that can bring about, is good enough to bring about change without medication. And I think everyone tries that. If someone is feeling a little sleepless or someone's going through a
Yeah.
difficult relationship or a bad time at work, the first line of consultation is a psychologist. And then if they're really severe, psychologists also refer them. And then, of course,
Mhm.
therapy has to continue throughout because that's the only way of communicating. Even a psychiatrist spends time, talking to clients and assessing symptoms before prescribing medication. So that's really important.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. That really gave me a lot of insights that I didn't have. So I will keep that in mind going forward. Now, I want to ask you, for our listeners, can you explain what is NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, and how does it help someone change their thought patterns?
Okay. So NLP, the neuro part of it is how the brain, how the neurons in the brain are connected. Like for instance, you must have heard that a term like neurons that wire together, fire together, which is talking about associations between the neurons and the connections and the neural pathways. A simple thing like for one person, if they wake up feeling stressed, the neural pathway would be to put on their shoes and go for a jog. And for another person, it might be to first pick up the phone and take the day off, like send a message. Okay. If I give you examples like this, so the neuro is about the neurology, like how it functions. Linguistics is the language of how it is, how they internalize messages from the outside world, what associations are there in their own mind, and how they communicate, like what a certain communication means to them. And the programming is that it's always been there for a long time now. Whether it came from childhood conditioning, whether it was even genetically there, we don't know. But NLP is working with changing that programming which is there. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Like you might have heard this that it takes 21 days to change a neural pathway. So, all the things that you're hearing today about forming healthy habits are telling you that if you do something, then the brain is going to get used to it. The other term we use is neuroplasticity, that the brain is not like, it's elastic, so it can be molded. So a person can start drinking 2 liters of water every day, or a person can start, running suddenly at the age of 35 or 40 or 50 to run the whole marathon. Now, it's about motivation. It's a lot about motivation. Certain percentage of people are very visual. So they learn better with images and pictures. Okay. We say that they are visual people. There are people who learn more by listening, and they respond more to sound and music and the voice of somebody. Like even in a classroom, you'll have those kids who could be sitting in the last row, but they just have to hear the teacher's voice and they understand everything because it's explained in a clear voice. These people, we call them auditory. And there is a third category, which is kinesthetic, people who learn more by sensing, by touching, feeling, literally, and also by being given examples which give them the experience of sensing something. So they are neither auditory nor visual, they are kinesthetic. So these are some basic things I've shared with you about NLP, which tell you, therefore, that if I have to make sense to a person who understands and is more open to listening, then I'd have them close their eyes and listen to something calming. If somebody is more visual, we would do more visualizations. Even in the way a person speaks, you can tell. If they're saying, oh, the sky was a vivid blue and there were white clouds, and they're very, very visual. Or they say that, oh, this person said this to me and I felt a shiver run down my spine. They're very kinesthetic. They just feel in their bodies. So, just trying to give you an example about how to understand NLP and how it works.
Wow, I think that was a very well put out answer. You explained three different kinds of people, right? We could either be visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. So that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Can
Yeah.
people be more than one? Can somebody be like visual plus auditory? Is that something
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
possible?
There can be
Uh,
combinations. Like they can be predominantly visual, and
mhm.
sometimes that sense, the kinesthetic sense, is also somewhat reasonably developed for them to receive messaging. And
Okay.
yeah, so there could be combinations.
Okay.
Yes.
And the mode through which they take in information and perceptions, does that really shape their thoughts?
See, especially when we are talking about bringing about a change or
Yeah.
motivating them to try something new.
Yeah.
So their receptivity is determined by what mode works the best for them.
Okay. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it.
In fact, they've even adapted some of these. I think they've written books for people to be persuasive. For example, how to craft advertising messages, right? Or how to perform in a sales meeting. Like you look at your client and they seem more kinesthetic, so actually maybe give them something like a presentation, like a printed something to hold. The visual guys like charts. So it's been adapted to different areas, NLP, and of course to healing. So if a person has had adverse experiences, we are trying to get them to heal from that, and we are trying to also have them visualize and have their body respond to something positive that they can now adopt and work through some of those difficult traumatic uh, times in their life.
Wow, it's beautiful how NLP makes healing very tailor-made because somebody can be auditory, somebody can be visual, somebody can be
Yes,
kinesthetic, somebody could be a combination of two or all three of them while being predominant in one. So I
yes,
love how NLP makes it tailor-made for each person instead of giving like a generalized blueprint. There's no one size fits all, especially in wellness, right? So I love that you
absolutely.
mentioned that.
Yeah, but since you mentioned that, I should also say that
Yes.
even in conventional therapy now, more and more we're talking about client-centered therapy, like which is more where rather than a certain framework which the psychologist has saying, oh, this could be this or this could be that. It's about staying with the client and saying, how are they responding? What is their story? How are they describing their experience? So mostly more and more therapy is becoming client-centered and as opposed to say classic when you're talking of very old times when Freudian psychotherapy, which was that there were certain models and there was analysis that was done according to something. Then we had Carl Rogers who first talked about client-centric or client-focused therapy, which is that each client is different. So that's really important.
Beautiful. That's a very beautiful answer. Now, I would want to ask you, inner child healing. This is a term that many people hear today. So, how
Mhm.
would you describe what it really means and why does it matter for all of us?
So, very simply put, we've all been shaped by childhood experiences, everything, right? So, if you think of a newborn baby as a blank slate that just soaks up everything in his or her environment. So, a lot of our personality, a lot of things get shaped even before we turn 7. And so, if it's already shaped by the time we are 7, then 7 onwards, everything, every way in which we are responding to life as it unfolds around us is coming from that conditioning. And definitely, therefore, if we find in our adult life that there are areas of our life where we feel confused or we can't deal with things, or we have, let's say, irrational fears, or we have, we feel constricted, or we feel there are barriers to our own progress, and in different areas of our life, right? Predominantly, we're talking about work and health and relationship, right? Then it's very, very important to look at childhood. Not that conventional psychotherapy doesn't look at childhood. In inner child therapy, we look at the fact that any experience that has happened in childhood, which has led to, let's just say an adverse experience, okay, that's happened in childhood, it leads to that person's energy, a part of their energy being frozen at that age. So if a person faced, let's say, abandonment at the age of 6, right? And it could have been as something like a child was sent to boarding school at the age of 6 and learned to adapt and live without her parents or his parents, okay? Now, at the age of 6, certain decisions were made, and 6 is too young to make certain decisions. So, how am I going to cope with being in a new place? Now, when this person is, say, 23 or 24 and they're in a job, they don't need to use those coping mechanisms. And more often than not, those coping mechanisms themselves can become a problem. For example, and I'll talk about a very popular term, now you hear it everywhere, you watch so many reels, called people pleasing. Now, if an uncomfortable 6-year-old in boarding school might have decided to become a pleaser, that if I'm nice, then I'll make more friends. If I'm nice, my teachers will like me. So something as deep as that, it starts out so young, which is why it's important to look at, to work with the inner child. So every behavior, every behavior has come up. Either there's something that's going really well and the child has just adopted it and made it his or her behavior style, right? And those could be like, how well a person is. Let's just say a person who's very particular about getting things done on time. Now, there's benefits of that, right? And it may have been a very positive reinforcement sort of situation. Or it may have been that this child was punished very harshly for not doing things on time. So either, whichever way it is, it all started in childhood. That's why we say we work with the inner child. So in inner child therapy, we actually visit, like the person sort of visualizes and goes to that part of childhood, maybe that incident or series of incidents or a theme that unfolded in their childhood, and works with the younger version of them to reassure them, and also physiologically, somatically feeling those sensations, that it's okay to let go of those patterns. You don't have to be a pleaser, because now in your current adult life, it's causing you some serious concerns. And you don't want to be like that. And you don't need to be either, right? Because those situations are no longer true in your present life, in your present life situation. So I hope that explains a little bit about inner child
Oh, yeah,
healing.
yes, that definitely did. It
Yeah.
gave me a lot of, insights about what inner child really is.
Hmm.
So let's say most of our brain patterns are formed by the time we're 7. And
Hmm.
you mentioned that the brain is plastic. We can change our neural pathways.
Yes.
But I would assume that inner child healing is not easy because these are pathways we've been holding on to ever since we've been 7. So is it
Absolutely.
actually possible to change our neural pathways, something that we've had since we were 7?
Yes, it's possible. It happens, and one is at a cognitive level, right? At a level of understanding, when you know that this is not serving me. This decision was made by me when I was 6 or 8 or 12, okay, and it's not serving me. Now that is, you can say, an intellectual awareness of it. There is also a somatic recognition, meaning the body feels. For instance, like let's say a person has, while they're doing this work with their inner child, they feel that there's a lot of discomfort in the belly. So it's we how we describe it is that the belly is the place where that emotional trauma or that feeling, that extreme feeling of pain has been stored as a sort of energetic block. And now more and more, when now we are talking about a famous book that got written, The Body Keeps the Score. And there's another very, very well-known therapist now who talks about trauma being stored in the body, Dr. Gabor Mate. So now there's more and more awareness of that. So at the level of body, it's possible to work with tools like breath work, with tools like somatic healing, where you can actually release trauma from the body. So it's released from the mind that, hey, this behavior doesn't serve you anymore. It's released from the body. And then it's released, let's say, maybe using something like NLP to kind of chart out a new neural pathway and then follow it, reinforce it, and make it your new habit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, does it take 21 days for a very old pattern to change as well, even for something that we've had since we were very young in terms of our inner child?
It's possible, Maitri, but for me to say that, I don't want to sound like make it very simplistic.
Yeah.
You see, the main problem is not once a person has uncovered the pattern, it becomes possible. I won't say easy. Each
Yeah.
person's cognition varies, their speed of learning, adapting varies. How much they trust the therapist and say, okay, this is why this is happening, I'm willing to change, that varies. But yes, change happens, like lots of changes. I've seen in my own in the course of the years that I've been working with inner child work, that really huge changes are possible. For example, if I give you an example, the other thing is we also work with, it has to do with developmental psychology. At what age did the trauma happen? So let's say if it happened to a person who was in their preschool years, would be very different to some kind of damage happening in their teen years. And so, what meaning they made out of it, for example, once that is uncovered, then it's easy to change a neural pathway. But the person has to trust the work, do the work, and because in the beginning it's going to look like it's impossible, like this just can't happen. So you must have heard things like, a person will never change, and that's coming from very rigid kind of thinking. I mean, all of, I think, mental health and self-help is proceeding from the understanding that we can change, right? Even physiological medicine now, I hear so much about nutrition and functional medicine, which is talking about reversing diabetes, reversing heart disorders. So it's possible to change the body, the mind, the thinking, the emoting, the habits, everything. If it weren't possible, then none of this would be possible. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful answer. I love how you highlighted that healing and wellness and even letting go looks different for everybody. It depends on what age that they, put that particular thinking or sort of say neural pathway in their mind. So it
Yes,
looks different for everybody, but it is possible. So that gives all of us a hope, sense of hope that yes, change is definitely possible.
definitely
That's
possible. Yeah.
that's
And among
beautiful.
the other things you mentioned, the coping mechanisms
Yeah.
that people have taken up, they can be resolved because very often the coping mechanism becomes a problem, right?
Hmm.
So everything that looks like, this behavior is self-sabotaging, it's
Yeah.
harmful for health, and it's come up in with reference to, or it's come up to protect the person from
Yeah.
something else that was even more harmful, that looked scarier. Yeah,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
thank you.
I would like to ask you, as an inner child healer, what are some signs that someone has unresolved childhood wounds?
Uh, Maitri, anything that looks that the person can't explain with a logical answer, then it's coming from something, it seems like, which is not in their awareness. Now, it's not that it's that they don't know what it is, but that they've suppressed it so much because it's so painful. So if they have suppressed it, they won't know it exists. For example, let's take the same kid who went to boarding school at the age of 6 and has,
Yeah.
let's say, an extreme fear of abandonment. Okay. And so
Mhm.
this person might become very clingy in relationships or even in friendships, right? uh, they don't know why they feel like that. They don't know that because I went to boarding school, I wasn't prepared. My parents maybe told me that, hey, we are taking a trip to meet your uncle or grandmother, and then they went and dropped me in boarding school. Right now, they don't know the level of shock and trauma they've
Yeah.
gone through at the age of 6. All they know is that if they can trust somebody, they want to hold on. They
Yeah.
don't want to let go. And they're wondering, like, why am I like this? And then, they read a bunch of books, self-help books, and they say, it's okay, you got to take charge. You've got to be responsible for yourself. You can be in control. And then they try, but it's all that trying is really intellectual, right? And all those trying, all those attempts are being made by the adult, whereas the damage happened when they were a child. So it makes sense to revisit that child state. Right? So we call it a regression, like we take a person back to when they were
Mhm.
6 years old to feel the feelings that the 6 year old felt and couldn't articulate or wasn't allowed to talk about. And when they heal that 6 year old self, then they can make changes in the 23 or 33-year-old self as well.
Beautiful. That's very beautiful. Thank you for your answer. Now, I would like to address the fact that you are also a sobriety coach. Now, what does sobriety coaching involve beyond just helping somebody stop drinking or stop using substances? I'm assuming it's so much more than that.
True. I think we naturally move towards this because at the
Yeah.
last part of the last part of the answer of your last question, where I spoke about things that look harmful or that are self-sabotaging, and that's the definition of addiction, right? A person doing things or taking substances which are harmful to their health, and yet it feels as though it is solving some problem. It is solving a problem of either anxiety or loneliness or something like that, right? So the I started working with people going through alcoholism, and the reason also was that I wanted to apply these holistic healing approaches to alcoholism. Okay, because like you rightly mentioned, it's not just about the cessation of taking the addictive or the harmful substance. That taking that substance actually is not the problem. For the person, that is the solution. Like they're feeling stressed out and terrible the moment they light a cigarette or they have a drink of alcohol, they actually feel calm. So first to convince them that, and then of course they've started seeing the harmful effects, but still their mind doesn't listen to that logic. So sobriety coaching is not just about staying sober, as in staying free of drugs and alcohol. Sobriety coaching is about building a whole life without this, and that everybody is capable of doing this. Even if a person started using drugs or alcohol or smoking maybe at the age of 8, before that they didn't know such a thing existed, right? And that's maybe the earliest that I'm giving you an example, that a person could have started. Most people start using alcohol maybe in their early college days, to have fun or to let loose and mingle with their friends and have a good time. um, at some point they find that the effect of that is such that it takes away their tensions and their troubles, and then it becomes a kind of, we use the term self medication. So they use it to deal with their stress or with their pain. Sometimes they don't even know, they keep thinking, oh, we're having a whale of a time. Working with them to understand why and how they can stop using it. So in fact, all the other things we talked of, they also come into sobriety coaching, which is their psychology, their thinking, emoting, behaving, their inner child wounds, uh, everything. Or NLP, for example, is used a lot. Particularly NLP is used a lot for quitting smoking, which involves again the experience of that a smoker has. How do you allow them, how do you train their neural pathways to have some other relaxation, like maybe just step outside for a walk or maybe sit down and have 10 deep breaths. Now if a heavy smoker is listening to me, they'll probably laugh and say, how can that ever work? But when the person is committed and deep down everybody knows that every time they're doing something that's harmful to their body, it is self-sabotage, right? So they know that. So they're harming themselves. And there are some very deep wounds which they say, okay, it's fine if I'm harming myself, but I can't do without it. That's the dependence, the chemical dependence on the alcohol, the nicotine, or whatever the substance is. Uh, and the other thing which helps in sobriety coaching and between 2013 and 2019, I ran like a physical center, like a brick and mortar de-addiction center, where people who were functional, who wanted to stop, they would come in. And there was a beautiful, like a sober community. So they could find identification, they could find peer support, all of which is very, very important in recovery from addiction. So they could do all the activities they normally did without the drugs and alcohol, like going for an outing, going outstation, watching a film, playing video games. Because everyone, again, NLP, if you remember, everyone has associations with their addictive consumption. Like it goes with a particular kind of music, or it goes when they are watching movies. Or so to be able to do those activities without substance is something that we would expose them to, and slowly they would adapt. Yeah.
I love the two things that you highlighted here. That one, what looks like self-sabotage to us might be self-medication for that person. That
Yes.
really helps us understand the mind of somebody who's addicted. Because
Yes.
from the outside, it's easy to just look outside in and say, oh, they're just, they're not disciplined. They don't have willpower. They
Yes.
don't want to change. Those are very meaningless, baseless assumptions that we make from the
Yeah.
outside in. But
Yeah. Oh, they've gone far beyond that, Maitri. You, if you
yeah,
if you look at a packet of cigarettes and the ghastly pictures,
yeah,
a person has gone way beyond looking
yeah,
at that and wondering what it's doing to their lungs, right?
yeah.
Because it is serving some purpose, which is why it's so hard. Also, chemically, nicotine is a very, very, very addictive substance.
Mhm.
So it's even harder to quit than
Yeah.
alcohol if someone has a problem with alcohol. Now coming to alcohol, because there is this, because socially it is so acceptable.
Yeah.
And again, you look at the association. If anyone has to have a good time, then they need to have drinks. That's the kind of
Yeah.
environment we live in these
Yeah.
days. So to pass up these temptations and and then and to focus on something, because for their health it's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you highlighted the social pleasure aspect of it because social drinking and social eating, that's something that we get to hear a lot about. So people, they might not even want to drink, but just because of the peer pressure, they don't want to, be seen as standing out or
Yes.
be seen as standoffish. So they
Yes.
just, they want to make everybody else feel comfortable, so they end up drinking, although they might not have even wanted that drink.
Yes.
So I love how you highlighted that. Love that. Now, I want to ask you, can you explain what? Now, I know we went into this a little bit, but I want us to go a little bit more into it. So, can you explain what are the emotional or psychological factors that usually lie beneath this addiction?
Uh, the emotional factors could be actually a whole range of factors. A person who's abusing drugs and alcohol could have had a very troubled childhood. They feel a lot of isolation. The substance, and I'm talking about somebody using it addictively, not socially, is that it becomes sort of their best friend. They are people who have not been given permission to express their emotions. Okay, so there are people with likely to be, and I don't want to say anything is sacrosanct because there are exceptions to everything. Mostly people who haven't been open about their emotions, or they cannot express their emotions. It could be people who feel a huge sense of isolation, people who have felt maybe that they have very low self-esteem and self-worth. So something like any substance helps them to bolster up courage to do something. It could be any of that. It could be, physical or emotional abuse, which has made a person lean towards a substance.
Mhm.
You see, the thing about substances, and this is not very commonly talked about, is that this big motivational guru Anthony Robbins, he's talked about it in one of his videos, and he says that it is about creating some kind of a feeling that is something that is certain and that is predictable. Okay, so if you look at fear and anxiety, it's coming from a fear of the unknown, an inability to control your environment, right? I don't know whether I'll get good marks. I don't know whether I'll get this job. I don't know if this girl or this boy will say yes to me.
Yeah.
Okay, and if a person can't deal with that, really, okay, and they don't know that they can seek help and all of that, now compare that to a drink. Every single time, compared to the world, which where the normal world, where there are so many uncertainties we deal with every day, right?
Yeah.
What time is our session going to be? Will your Wi-Fi or my Wi-Fi lag? There's so many
Yeah.
little uncertainties, right?
Yeah.
Which we cope with along the way. Now, the moment a person has tasted a substance, they know that every single time that they go back to use that substance, it is going to give them the exact same experience.
Yeah.
So it helps them to beat uncertainty. It is their oasis of certainty and predictability in a
Mm-hmm.
world that's quite impossible to predict or to
Mm-hmm.
have, a grip on. Because
Mm-hmm.
everything doesn't go according to how we think it'll go or how we plan it to go. So, so there's a lot of fear,
Mm-hmm.
and because we're talking about fear, what I also want to say, and which will be of use to our viewers, is that a lot of times people may label a person as a person with a temper or a very angry person. And usually there is a deep layer of fear which is being covered over by the anger. Now, the person cannot handle things going a particular way, and they're actually very scared. But the anger becomes a kind of a defense. So if they start yelling and scaring the other person, then they get their message across. So all these, so you'll find after, even with alcohol, when a person is drunk, they're yelling and they're shouting and screaming. One is it's an altered state that they are in, and the other thing is that it's a lot of fear which is being masked over with the anger. That also happens.
That's really, you don't really think about all these aspects of it when we think about us drinking or when we think about somebody else being addicted, even. The emotional side of it, I would say, is unfortunately completely ignored. So I love how you
Yes.
highlighted that every single
Yeah.
addiction does have a very valid reason, and it's self-medication to somebody. They want life to be more predictable. They're trying to escape and trying to get themselves into this state of predictable dopamine hits because they know how they're going to be feeling and they want that feeling. They crave that feeling. That's very
Yes.
valid. That's very valid.
Yeah.
And I would say the key is working with our body, not working against it, right? So you mentioned that we would create other releases and other relaxation mechanisms for them to replace this with
Absolutely.
something more healthier. Maybe they can become addicted to yoga or become addicted to healthy eating. There's always better swaps or better
Certainly.
replacements. Beautiful. So
Yeah.
thank you for your answer. Now I would want to ask you, you're a breathwork facilitator. So how would you describe breathwork to someone like me who's a complete beginner to it?
Right. So my own experience has been that I found breathwork about 2.5 years back, and I was told that here is this technology. All you do is you take deep breaths, and there'll be a music track playing, and the breath, having when you breathe deep and fast, you will go on a journey of your own psyche. And in the beginning, I didn't even believe. I mean, when I heard it for the first time, I'm like, is this even possible? And then I went for a workshop, and I found that yes, it happens, right? So the breath, when you're inhaling and exhaling fast, it makes a certain part of the brain, which is a sort of a default way of thinking. In fact, it is being called the default mode network of the brain. It causes that to slow down. Okay, breathing is paired with evocative music. So a very specifically curated music track is played. Back in the early 50s, in fact, or even before that, um, there was this pioneering work being done with the use of psychedelics in therapy, right? And so a person would be given a small dosage of the psychedelic medicine, and they would be asked to put on an eye mask, and this music would be played to bring up certain emotions to the surface. And healing could happen, and corrective, therapy could be given, right? And while they were in that state of expanded awareness, which was created by the substance, let's say like LSD or like psilocybin, mushrooms. Now, this breath work, this kind of breath work, one of the earliest being Dr. Groff, who created something called holotropic breath work. And he was initially working, like I said, with psychedelics. And when the psychedelics got banned, he created this way of walking into the psyche and having a huge, a deep journey of the psyche in a state of expanded awareness. So the essence is that. So, with neurodynamic breathwork, what we offer is an hour-long breath and music set, an introduction which prepares the person to undertake this journey, and after which we have a sharing circle where they begin to integrate their experience, talk about it. Like, I had this experience where I saw that I was floating in the clouds, it felt amazing, and I felt that I could deal with a particular part of my life where there is some difficulty. Or I saw that when I was a child, I used to have a lot of fears about the dark, or whatever it is, right? These are just random examples I'm giving you. And I could see that I could heal that little child who was sitting alone on the steps of my house, and I could make contact. So sometimes, since we talked about inner child healing, sometimes inner child healing happens spontaneously in a breathwork session. So it's really, really powerful. So if you ask me, I think everyone should try breathwork, and it could be that they make it a regular practice, and integrating some of the the material that comes up. It's psychodynamic material that comes up in a breathwork session, using that and to bring about changes in their life. So it's really, really powerful.
Beautiful. So you mentioned expanded consciousness. Expanded awareness, sorry. So can we say that when there's a group of people doing a breathwork session together, do they kind of enter like a shared consciousness, if I may say so?
I wouldn't put it like that, but in my experience, there seems to be a shared energy. So if people are breathing together, they could be having experiences with similar themes, though
Oh,
they do, each one has their own experience based on
yeah,
their unique history, the
yeah,
state of their body and mind on that particular day. So
yeah,
it would be unique. But yes, sometimes we find that just because when they're going into the session,
yeah.
right? In fact, the term that Dr. Groff used was a psychonaut, right? Like an
Mhm.
astronaut going into space. A
Beautiful.
psychonaut is someone going on a journey of the psyche. So he said, you are all psychonauts. So, you put on your mask and you go into a journey of the psyche. So, of course, it's likely, right? And if you ask me personally, have I heard people share very similar things? Just last week, two people had an experience of, letting go of something and forgiving someone in their life. And two people in the sharing circle spoke about very similar experiences, emotions, and
Yeah.
resolution happening. So yeah, it's not unlikely. Yeah. It is what, the great psychologist Carl Jung, he called it the collective unconscious, that we don't know about it, but it's
Yeah.
there as an energy in the collective. Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. Now, I want to flow into our next question, which is with all of these modalities that we've seen together, we've seen NLP, we've seen inner child healing, we've seen sobriety coaching, and lastly, we've seen breath work just now. What is one simple daily aspect, if you had to boil it down to one daily practice, I'm sorry, that can anybody listening to this can start their own healing journey, holistic healing journey?
Maitri, there are so many practices, but if you ask me one practice,
Mhm.
especially a person who's going through some challenges, let's just say the challenges coming from a new curriculum of study, a new
Yeah,
job, or a change of place, or usually those are things that bring to the surface something that's already there, it's
yeah,
dormant.
yeah.
In a new relationship for that matter, right? It brings certain things up. One place to start, I would actually say, is journaling, right? If you can write a few lines every day, and in fact, I tell people who say, "Oh, we don't like writing," I tell them, "Okay, why don't you type it out, on a document on your computer or your phone?" If you don't even like typing, record a voice note, because all our phones now come with that software. It's just to record what you are feeling. It's just an opening to expression, whether it's a written or a typed or a spoken journal. I think that is one practice for everyone to see, just to become more self aware. Like, what was happening? What am I looking at? Because as it is, there's a lot of help available today. Everything can be Googled. I mean, there's AI, and but if you were to look at yourself, because this entire journey that we started was with the self, right? The identity that got formed when we were 7 years old. I'm like this, I'm like that. These aspects don't change about me. What better way is there, if you're looking to change, than to first record everything that is there?
Mm.
And the best way to do that is by maintaining a regular journal, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Journaling is definitely something that has really helped me also personally. Although I did start off
Mhm.
being more regular and now I'm irregular, but it really
Mhm.
helped, give shape my thoughts, give a structure to thoughts that seemed to be all over the place. But when I put it down on paper, I realized that most of them really
Yeah.
point to the same thing. It gave me a lot of
Yes.
clarity in that sense. So I love that. I love how you mentioned journaling. You could not have said it better. Now, I would want to ask you our closing question, which is what, according to you, is a life well lived?
That's a good question. A life well lived, according to me, is a life of exploration. And that's my personal opinion. And I think that, and it's been my experience as well. I'm all for, discovering things, just like an exploration about what's available in the world and an exploration about what's within. So, self exploration, why am I like this? How did I turn out like this? I think that for each human being, the most interesting thing is you and your life and your habits and your preferences, and how come this unique personality got shaped. So, and then to explore outside, the outside world, and everybody has different ways of doing it. For someone, it could be about exploring art or literature or science. So, for me, a life well lived is when you feel that you've had the freedom to explore, you've had the freedom to go looking for yourself, and that you've not taken anybody's opinion or advice as sacrosanct. Like, you've gone and figured things out for yourself.
That's such a beautiful answer. A life filled with exploration, both outside and within, both external and internal. That's very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that answer, and thank you for every one of your answers. They've been really insightful. I know how busy you are, but you've taken out the time to make this happen, which speaks volumes about you. Thank you for making this happen.
Lovely doing this, lovely catching up with you, Maitri. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And that's a wrap, guys. We will be seeing you in the next episode with a new guest. And until then, bye bye.
Bye.